teaches classes in conflict management, media writing, and more importantly, co-teaches research methods for those of you interested in public affairs. He's an all-around, well-researched, well-read, good guy. 9 a.m. Jared goes to the Raider Express store at the University Center to get a candy bar and a Dr. Pepper. He ran into Brad, who said he would take JR and Jim Bob to the NFB meeting on Saturday. 10:40 a.m. Eastern. Jim and Claude arrived in Jacksonville and arrived in the North Florida University School of Business. He had an address at 11 a.m. about business cooperation with government for economic solutions regarding the economy and health care as well. They had checked into the Jacksonville Hyatt. Today at 2, Jim had yet another meeting with the Railroad Commission via teleconference. At 11 a.m. Eastern, Jim is lecturing about the importance of business cooperation with government in handling issues such as jobs and health care. However, he is questioned by a few students who called themselves branch conservatives that annoyed Jim. 2 p.m. Eastern. Jim is in his hotel room attending the Texas Railroad Commission meeting by teleconference. Things are going reasonably well, except that Bob Bullock, knowing that Jim was seeking an appointment by the Clinton administration, asked Jim to resign. However, some of the commissioners said that they would appeal his ruling for resignation directly to the governor. 11 a.m. Central. Karen Crowder pulls her car out in front of the foreign language building. "Hey, you, let's go," Karen said. "I hear you're going back to see your. I hear you're going back to see your mom and sister this weekend," JR said. "Yes. Can you believe it? Mom was playing on the side with the man she divorced, playing around on him, and now she's getting ready to be hitched with hubby number 6. Man, I'm sorry. And how are you? How are things?" "Well, things are, things. Don't be coy with me, JR. Out with it." Brad, he's really copying an attitude. "I'll treat you to Taco Villa if you can at least give Brad some respect. If you can at least give Brad another chance." 2:30 p.m. Central. JR returns back to his dorm dejected. Kevin McDonald had left to fly out to Fort Worth to play a soccer game tomorrow night against Texas Christian University. 6:20 p.m. JR is having fish for dinner in his room with Charlie and Clyde Nation. It's not over yet now, man," Charlie said. "Don't do this to JR," Clyde said. "Can't you see he's trying to move on? Actually, I have a date with her Saturday night in Odessa," JR said. "Grab her," Charlie said. Man, lay off, Clyde said. Shut up and let's just listen to Blake Carter, Gerald said. October 7th passed quietly. On the morning of October 8th at 3:30, J.R. wakes up thinking about the previous day. It had not gone well for J.R. at all. He had gotten another upsetting phone call from Kyle, and Jim Bob Horton had announced that he wasn't hanging out with JR yet, but instead he would meet with Brad and Karen. Not to mention Kevin McDonald came home in a bad mood because Texas Tech lost the soccer game. But the good news was that George Hooper was moving Spanish class to lab, but JR had already done the lab work the night before. So his plan was to leave school right after government class. JR is relieved to finally spend a weekend at home. And so this morning he has plans to have breakfast with Dave Smith. 4:05 a.m. Gerald heads into the main study lounge adjacent to the living room. And he is relieved that Charlie Nation is not in front of the couch again. With that, he opens up his government textbook and starts studying. 5:05 a.m. Eastern. Jim and Claude drive in the rain to the airport, running to head towards the private jet for the 6 a.m. flight for Concord, New Hampshire. Today, Jim had a major keynote with Southern New Hampshire University School of Business, and then a keynote again dinner that night. 5:25 a.m. Eastern. Jim and Claude get onto the private jet bound for Concord, New Hampshire. Joining them is New Hampshire Governor Steve Merrill, who attended a jobs seminar in Atlanta and would be hosting the dinner at which Jim would be speaking as a keynote tonight. 6 a.m. Eastern. The private jet taxis down the runway and takes off for the 2-hour flight to Concord, New Hampshire. Today was quite a schedule. He was to have breakfast with the governor in the governor's mansion, then head straight to SNHU Business School for his 11 a.m. seminar. Then he would have a chance to relax at the hotel before attending the 8 p.m. dinner. 5:10 a.m. Central. Dave Smith pulls out in front of Gordon Hall. "Hey man, what's up? Let's go," Jared said, getting into the car. "Good to see you, Dave." Dave pulls the car off campus. "Man, me and Karen Kreider." "What's wrong now?" Dave asked. "You know, we met 6 months ago at the library. She was such a, I don't know, countess," Jared said. "But once she met Brad, things changed." "Man, try to calm down with that. She's just another girlfriend. Try to see some other people. That's what I had to do when Shirley dumped me last semester. And look, I'm with Clara Wells. Who can ask for more? They drive to IHOP for breakfast. 7 a.m. Eastern. The flight is halfway to Concord, New Hampshire, and Jim is talking to New Hampshire Governor Steve Merrill. He asked Merrill if he could get him access to the president and people in Congress. Merrill stated he worked at one point closely with Joseph LaFalce and would see if something could be done on his behalf. 6 a.m. Central. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Betsy is talking about feeding some hogs in the South 40. The foreman said he would get to it. Betsy and Elizabeth were overjoyed to hear that JR was coming home for the weekend. Meanwhile, upstairs, Elizabeth wakes up. Today she has to take some IV chemotherapy at the Permian Basin Oncology System. Thomas, her grandson, would drive her to and from the center for her treatments. 8 a.m. Eastern. Jim's party arrives at Concord, New Hampshire. Where they were greeted by a Cadillac Fleetwood limousine that took them directly to the governor's mansion. 7:10 a.m. Central. Back in the car, JR and Dave continued their conversation from the restaurant. Man, Dave, I need to get back into better shape, JR said. There's nothing wrong with you, JR. Not according to how I did in last week's swim meet. But when I did it with some measurable improvement. And I wasn't always the thin-toned one that you see before you now. I was the chubby boy at Big Spring High School, Dave said. Oh, the chubby kid, JR said. No way. I've always seen you as somebody who takes care of their health. 8 a.m. In government class, Jack Fitzmiller and Friedrich McKay debate over the issue of universal health care. And seeing as the health care, JR takes copious notes. He's looking for Mary Jo to pick him up and take him back home. 8:35 a.m. Central. JR was relieved when Joe and Mary Jo showed up at Holden Hall after receiving a text to pick him up, and so they could head back home to the ranch. 10 a.m. Eastern. Jim and Claude check in to the Hilton Garden and get a suite on the 8th floor. It was Jim's design to do a swim in between his lecture hall keynote and dinner keynote. As tomorrow also, when they're going to be doing some break. At 11 a.m. Eastern, at the SNHU School of Business, Jim is discussing business development with a little government cooperation. On the way to Concord, Jim learns that from Claude that he does not want to go to Oxford, England. However, Claude tells Jim that Greg and Lorna Sanders were being assigned to cover some stories in Oxford, England. So they